Hey everybody, and thanks for the welcome. You know, it used to be that I would introduce you, say, this is Caleb, my son. Now coming to New Zealand, this is Caleb, and I'm his dad. Switch, so it's great to be here, and I know I've met quite a number of you because we have been here before, but also because I led a day retreat last year at some point, and we really enjoyed the day and the company. I want to start with a story, because I heard a story of a curate who was due to preach on a particular Sunday, and the bishop sort of snuck in at the back. He had a Sunday off and he wore civvies, and he sort of sneaked in at the back to watch what was going on. And the bishop could see, as the curate got up to preach, the whole congregation slide down in their seats, kind of ready for 40 winks. And the bishop thought, oh, this is ominous. And then the curate started his sermon by saying, I woke up one morning to find myself in the arms of another man's wife. To which the whole congregation suddenly sat up. The bishop sat up, all stunned, and then the curate said, it was my father's wife. And then he talked about the joy of his mother. And the bishop thought, this is a really cool illustration to start a talk. And he had a civic dignitaries meeting later on that week. He thought, I'm going to use this as an opener. So he turns up at this meeting, and the mayor is there, and politicians and councillors, and they're all sitting there for this dinner, and the dinner takes place, and then it's the bishop's turn to get up and say something. So he stands up and he looks at all these people, and they're kind of sliding down in their seats for 40 winks, and the bishop says, here we go. I woke up one morning to find myself in the arms of another man's wife. To which the whole audience suddenly sat up, rather stunned and shocked by this, and there was a long silence after which the bishop said, and for the life of me, I can't remember whose wife it was now. Oh dear. That will mean something later on. The other thing that I shared with some of you when I was on retreat was, leading the retreat, was that I enjoy reading. I try and read widely, and except for I have one fault. I have lots of faults actually, but one fault in reading is that if somebody recommends a book to me, I very rarely get round to reading it. Or even if they give me a book, I very rarely get round to reading it, because I have to have my heart really has to be motivated to read a book. So sometimes I get given books, and I never ever read them. And my youngest daughter, Esther, gave me The Help by Catherine Stockin. Some people may be familiar with that. She said, Dad, I'm going to give this to you for your birthday. You need to read it. It's like To Kill a Mockingbird. I know your favourite book, so you need to read it. So I said, great, thank you. And then a year went by, and it was still sitting on my shelf. And I hadn't made the 25 books that I had beside my bed or anything, and it was there. And then one Christmas, a year later, it was on the television. So she said, oh, you need to watch this film with me, with your daughter. Sit and watch this film with your daughter. So I watched The Help, and it's really good film. And I'm really taken with it. So as soon as the film's over, I go upstairs and I pull the book off the shelf, and I sit in bed, and I start reading it, beginning to read it, and I could hear Esther coming up the stairs, and then the door opens slightly, and she peers round the door, and she says, I see you're reading the book, Dad. So I say, yes, and then she goes out, and I can hear her in the hall going, yes! But the book by Catherine Stockin, The Help, really follows it's set in 1960 in Jackson, Mississippi, and it follows the journey of African Americans who are working as maids in the white community there. It's got humour, but it's very poignant too, and it's challenging. There is one moment, the end of the film, it's quite moving at the end of the film, because Aibileen, this maid, has been dismissed, unfairly dismissed, but she's been dismissed, and she goes to the little girl, the 4-year-old girl that she's been helping her to grow and to understand and be confident in herself. And she said to her, all the way through the time that she's looked after, you must remember these 3 things. And they're this: you is kind, you is smart, you is important. You is kind, you is smart, you is important. And the little girl at the end, when Aibileen has been dismissed, that's the last thing she says to the little girl. She says, what have I taught you? She says, you is kind, you is smart, you is important. There's a kind of irony about the fact that she's teaching this little white girl to feel her sense of importance in the context of what has happened. But I want to move 2,000 years earlier to the baptism of Jesus. Because when you get to the baptism of Jesus and he comes down the water, he's dipped into the water, he's raised up by John the Baptist after the baptism, and the Holy Spirit descends, and the Father speaks to Jesus these words. He says, "You are my Son, whom I love. You bring me great joy." That's a good translation of those words. "You are my Son, whom I love. You bring me great joy." And so when we stand here and we baptize Leah, we are reenacting that, and the Father is saying to Leah, "Leah, you are my daughter, whom I love. You bring me great joy." He is delighted in his mercy and grace in Leah as she is baptized. But the same goes for you and I at our baptism, and when we find Christ and he lifts us up and raises us on our feet and gives us new life, and we are here in his presence, and he says to you and to me, "You are my," let's start with your name, "You're my son, you're my daughter, whom I love, you bring me great joy." Every one of us, you need to hear that the Father is speaking those words to you. You are his son, his daughter, who he loves, and you bring him great joy. That is the amazing thing about grace. We're just about to move into the season of Lent, and we're going to be considering and thinking about grace, the wonderful, abundant gift of God. And here it is, already, before we even get to Ash Wednesday. The wonderful, abundant grace and gift of God is this. He says to you, "You are my son." He says to you, "You are my daughter, whom I love. You bring me great joy." And you haven't earned it. Don't think that, well, everybody else, that's okay for everybody else, but you don't know what I've done or what I've thought or what I've said and that kind of thing. It's nothing to do with what you've done or thought or said. It's to do with God. And he never fails in his promise. He loves you. His grace reaches out to you. Let those words speak deep into your heart, because he means them when he says it. And what is amazing, it isn't just for the individual, it is for you, but actually he comes way down even before the baptism of Jesus. These words are spoken over the community of faith, over the people of God. Which is why we had Isaiah 51 read out a moment ago, because here is this community, Isaiah 51, who've lost their buildings. They've lost their roots. They've experienced considerable upheaval as a people of God, and they find themselves in exile. And the Father looks over the people of God, the community of faith. He looks over them, and what does he say? "You, Israel, the people of God, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the offspring of Abraham, my friend, you whom I took from the ends of the earth and called from its farthest corners, you as the people of God, you are my servant, I have chosen you and not cast you off." Hear it, people of God, in one word. The Father says, "I have chosen you and I have not cast you off." And there is more. You're my servant. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be afraid, just in case you didn't get it the first time. Do not be afraid, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will uphold you. I will help you. I will help you. I will make you a threshing sledge, sharp, new, and having teeth. I, the Lord, will answer them. I, the God of Israel, will not forsake you. I will open rivers on the bare heights. I will make the wilderness a pool of water. I will put in the wilderness the cedar, the acacia, the myrtle, and the olive. I will set in the desert the cypress, the plane, and the pine together. Why? Because I am your God. I will do all this for you. I have not forgotten you. But then it goes even further. This journey, this story, because right at the very foundation of the founding of the people of God, what do we discover? We discover Rachel and Leah. Right there, where in the book of Ruth it says these words, "May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel." So right down in the beginning of Genesis, we not only see the grace of God at the baptism of Jesus, at Leah's baptism, and also in exile when the people of God have lost all their places. We see the grace of God right at the start. And if you want to read the book of Genesis, you can't get a better description of dysfunctional families than just by reading through those stories. Just in the little journey that we think that surrounds Leah, we see something that is extraordinary. Again, we discover the people of God are by no means pristine perfect. There's particularly jealousy and deception. Let's start first of all with Jacob and Rebekah. Remember, Isaac says to Esau, he says, "Esau, go and get some food for me. Go and get some game, then prepare it for me, and I will give you the blessing." And Rebekah hears this, and she goes to her other son, to Jacob, and says, "Look, here is your opportunity. Dress up like Esau, because your father cannot see properly. And so go into him when he cannot see, and bring him some food, and pretend that you're Esau, and you will get the blessing." So he comes in, and Isaac cannot see, and he cannot hear properly. And as a result of that, when he enjoys the food, he pronounces a blessing upon Jacob and not Esau. And then Jacob gets in all kinds of trouble, and Esau threats to kill him once Isaac is gone. So Jacob ends up in exile. He's on the run. He is deceived through seeing and hearing. Then what happens? He meets his uncle Laban. And when he gets to his uncle Laban, he falls in love with Rachel. So when he meets his uncle Laban, he says, can I marry your daughter, Rachel? And Laban says, "Yes, of course you can. Maybe you could kind of work for me 7 years for her, that she's worked that, isn't she?" A bit of abuse of the daughters. So Jacob agrees to do this, and after 7 years of working, they have the marriage ceremony, and at night, on the night of the wedding, so Jacob goes into the tent, and then he thinks Rachel is coming into the tent, but because he can't see and he can't hear properly, what happens? It says when he woke up in the morning, there was Leah! That's all it says, actually, in the Hebrew. It just says, there was Leah. It's like, ah! I woke up one morning to find myself in the arms of another man's wife. Right there was Leah. What a surprise. Deception in seeing and hearing. But as we read the story, we discover also that Leah is not loved by Jacob. She's despised. Jacob is drawn to Rachel. He works another 7 days, then marries Rachel, and then he has to work another 7 years for her to complete the arrangement. But he despises Leah. But God has not forgotten Leah. Even though she seems to be overlooked, he is not forgotten. And so we read in the story that she is the one who bears children, while Rachel is barren for a season. And when it comes to it, what happens? She has her first child, and she calls her first child Reuben, which is a wordplay on God has seen my suffering. And then the second child that she has, she calls Simeon, which is a wordplay on God has heard my lament. So at this point we discover that with deception all the way through, with seeing and hearing, Isaac not seeing, not hearing, Jacob not seeing, not hearing, what do we see? God sees and hears. And that affirmation that God has not overlooked Leah. And there is more. She has a third child, and in the third child, she calls the child Levi, which is that now I've got 3 children, surely Jacob will love me. Well, how sad that part of the story is. Because she knows she is overlooked and she longs to be loved, but still she is not loved. And the third child echoes that. But the fourth child that she has, she calls Judah. And this is a departure from the journey that she's had. There is a change that is taking place in Leah's life. For Judah means praise the Lord. So now she has discovered that her security does not lie in how many children she has. Her security does not lie in whether her husband loves her or doesn't love her. Her security lies in God's love for her. Because Leah, you are my daughter, whom I love. You bring me great joy. And this Leah, as we stand here, the father says to her, Leah, you are my daughter, whom I love. You bring me great joy. And then the father's eyes look out to you. And as he looks at you, into your heart, into your very being, he says to you, your name, you're my son, or you're my daughter, whom I love, says the Father. You bring me great joy. Let's be still for a moment. Maybe close our